Hello and welcome to AFCast. I'm your host, Malcolm, and today I'm going to be talking about the new update that came out for Tom Clancy's The Division 2, and it is called Dark Hours, and this is mainly for the 8-man raid that is called Operation Dark Hours, and it also has a couple new missions and some helpful improvements to the game. So first I'm going to talk about Operation Dark Hours, which is the 8-man raid in The Division 2. This is the first ever raid that's come out in a Division game, so it's pretty cool. But essentially, the 8-man raid is at an airport that is controlled by the Black Tusk, and you need to essentially deactivate a weapon that is there, and by deactivate in the Division standards, that always means destroy. So. But there are 4 main boss battles, the last one obviously being the machine that you have to destroy, and each one kind of has their own puzzle on how to defeat them that you need to figure out. I would recommend that you figure it out yourself and not actually look up a guide, because that is more fun. So I won't actually be telling you how to get through the 8-man raid, but I bet you that by now there are plenty of guides, YouTube videos, everything like that that you can find out there in order to get through this if you really don't want to figure out the puzzles for yourself, or if you get stuck at a certain point in time during the raid. Many people have already done live streams and YouTube videos on the entire raid anyway, so you could even watch that if you really wanted to. So during the 8-man raid, I would recommend that you try to have a team of people that you know yourself, and this is because you will need to communicate with your team a lot in order to take on this challenge, especially during the boss battles, and also especially since you don't have your mini-map available to you, which means that you also don't have your enemy detector in the mini-map, you know, how it like turns red in places that shows you the main direction of where enemies are. You won't have that. So it's really good to have communication, especially when the boss comes in and you have to defeat the boss. Your team will be split into 2 subgroups. I'm still not entirely sure of what this actually does, or if it's optional even, but I would recommend that anytime that you have to split up, you try splitting up in those subgroups. Like if you want to have a strategy that has 2 separate teams, I'd recommend that you split up into those 2 subgroups. Or that's just an easy way to categorize it. You can obviously split yourself up however you want to. But yeah. But I would recommend having a lot of medics in the game, and definitely have a lot of DPS and maybe even a couple tanks on your team. This is just that way you can have a couple people that can take in a lot of damage and survive for longer, because you do have a certain amount of revives available to you. Now, this doesn't mean that you just revive someone that's downed, but if they are fully dead, you can only revive them only like 3 times. So you will have that revive available to you. And if you restart at a checkpoint from the boss battle, then you get your revives back. But if you do end up being at the last area with none of your revives available to you, then you're kind of screwed. But I will say that when you revive someone from when they're dead and pick them back up, you're the one who loses the revive point, not them. So it's almost like you have a certain amount of stims or something like that that you can give them. One cool thing that is obviously too late now, if this is the first time you're hearing about it, is that the first group that completed the raid actually has their picture taken and is put up on a wall in the White House. I'm not exactly sure where or how to direct you there, but definitely look it up as to see where it is and go see who the people are that actually defeated it for the first time. This may be a reoccurring thing, because I'm pretty sure this isn't going to be the only raid that the Division 2 is going to come out with. So it is possible that the whole wall will be filled with pictures based on how many raids they start to come out with as the game progresses on. Completing the raid also gets you a trophy that was also added in the update. And then there's also some new apparel. There's a new apparel event that's going to happen, or that is already happening right now, called Dark Hours, obviously, that has new emotes, outfits, masks, and weapon skins, just like all the other apparel events. And it has a whole new commendation set for Operation Dark Hours as well. And so that's everything I have for Operation Dark Hours. But on the same note of commendations, they did get rid of all of the time commendations. So what I mean by that, they got rid of 5 of the service ones, where you have 28-day distinction, distinguished service ribbon, supreme response distinction, and the year 1 merit, and the division service merit. All of those were timed based, like you do something for 7 days in a row, you do it for 30 days in a row, you play for this amount of days every month for an entire year, I'm pretty sure was one of them. There was even one where you had to play for like 28 days, which is more than 600 hours of gameplay. And they didn't want people to have to commit to stuff like that, that maybe doesn't have the time. And also things that were happening to me where there were glitches where it would actually get rid of some of your time, or it wouldn't update your login, and it would say that you haven't played for a consecutive day and you'd lose your progress, which is really frustrating. But if you were currently in the middle of one of those commendations, you did get a merit called the Vanity Patch, so you will get that at least. And in place of those 5, they added another new 5, which is the Full Deck Distinction, which you get all the snitch cards in the game in order to get that. The Distinguished Service Distinction, which is complete 30 hours of service. Then you have the Supreme Response Distinction, which is complete all main missions and strongholds on hard difficulty or above. Control Point Takeover Merit, which is take over 50 heroic control points, which is like the max level control point that you can get in the game. Then you have the Invasive Service Merit, which is complete 10 invaded strongholds. And then they also, besides, those were the new ones, by the way, those were the new commendations. And they've also changed how some commendations work as well, making them easier, not harder, so you don't have to worry about them being even harder for you to get. But all of them, I'm pretty sure they changed all of the discovery merits. That way, teammates can even pick up the loot and get the discovery merit at the same time that you can. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to explain it. You can look at it and see what the discovery merit is, and maybe you understand, maybe you don't understand what I'm saying. So that was the commendations. So they've also added, besides the 8-man raid, they've also added 2 classified missions that show how the Black Tusk took over Washington, D.C. And they did say that they will add more classified missions in newer title updates. So this won't be the only time that we'll get these new missions, but they are pretty cool. I'd recommend that you check them out. So now I'm kind of getting into like the patch notes and stuff, like some stuff that they added into the game. It's a bit smaller than these 8-man raids, and obviously the 2 new missions that were added. One of them is crafting updates. So they increase the size of receiver component and protective fabric capacities significantly because everyone was getting them overfilled and then would use them really fast and then suddenly wouldn't have any of them. So people were getting frustrated that they weren't able to accumulate a bunch over time and use them how they needed them. So they've increased the size of that to make the game a little bit more fair with the crafting recipes there. And then they've also made Anaya Al-Khalik, which is the person that is in charge of crafting, is now a vendor, and she sells specialized and superior skill mod blueprints, and she gives you a weekly bounty for crafting supplies and blueprints. So you can get specialized and superior skill mod blueprints from her in order to increase how well your skills can perform, which is a lot nicer than trying to get them off of the field or from the regular vendor, which they've actually gotten rid of all the blueprints from him. They've also made a couple recalibration updates where there is now a recalibration score next to the gear score of an item, showing how close you are to max level. This is what they had in the first division, and then they got rid of that. I personally dislike that they got rid of it, so I'm happy that they've added that back in, because it's easier to tell when your gun is actually, or gear or anything like that, has reached your max level of recalibration, and you know when you need to switch it out for something else and then recalibrate that. And it does, there's a couple other smaller things that I don't want to go into, but it also helps you with recalibration. Obviously, you can check out the patch notes for yourself. All you have to do is look up the Division 2 Dark Hours patch notes, and you should find it pretty much anywhere. A few loot updates that I want to mention. Obviously, there are more than just this, so once again, check out the patch notes if you want to know everything. But loot containers now reset at a certain time every day instead of 24 hours after opening them. which is helpful. But then you'll also have times where you'll essentially open them and then they'll instantly have loot again, which is kind of cool. I think I liked it better when it was 24 hours after opening them because that just makes a little bit more sense. But what are you going to do? Because I think it actually helps improve the servers. So, it's actually better that they have it this way, but it makes more sense the other way, if you know what I mean. But anyway, they've also improved the loot drops from drone helicopters, which is an event that can happen on the fly where you have to take down one of these drones that will fly overhead that is heavily equipped with machinery. By machinery, I mean machine guns. And they will obviously attack you, but now instead of giving you crappy loot for a hard to defeat drone that's flying above you, now you get some pretty good loot from them, which I've learned to avoid those things because it's really not worth the battle when you don't get enough stuff for them. But yeah. But besides that, they did decrease the loot drops that you get from clan caches, which kind of suck, but they were kind of OP, to be honest with you. And key cabinets now hold Dark Zone keys as well, so you won't just find the faction-specific keys inside of those key containers. You will now find Dark Zone keys as well. I feel like that wasn't really needed, but hey, it's something if you play a lot of Dark Zone, so there you go. And then enemies won't drop loot under the player's max level anymore, which is very helpful because before it was very hard to actually, get up to higher gear scores so that you can complete higher missions and stuff like that. So, and loot now has a better chance of dropping above the player's level, so you can, and that's due to, them getting rid of it not being able to drop under your level. But now you're able to get to the gear score 500 much quicker. And not only that, but gear that you get from control points and missions that are in harder difficulties will no matter what be level 500 as long as you complete the mission on those harder difficulties and that you are level 500 or gear score 500 rather, not level. But yeah. And when I mean that stuff can't drop below your level, I mean that it can't drop below level 23 or 24 or 25. Now it just has less of a chance of dropping below your gear score. So your gear score still will have about the same drops, but it will increase for going above you and then decrease for loot drops that are below your gear score. So just wanted to clarify that before people start getting mad at me for providing the wrong information for that. So yeah. But they did also increase ammunition drop chances from the enemies. I've never really had that many problems with losing ammunition, but apparently a lot of people were complaining about it. So they made it more likely for AIs to drop ammo, which is pretty helpful, especially when you're going against a large group of enemies and you start to run out of ammo. And then obviously the melee in this game isn't really that good. So essentially it's better to have more ammo. So yeah. They also added this really cool new feature called post-mission activity summary, which essentially after a mission, it gives you a post-mission activity summary. So this basically just shows the amount of kills that you got, just I haven't actually seen it yet, so I'm not entirely sure what it shows, but it shows a whole bunch of stats. I'm pretty sure it shows headshot percentage, how many people you've killed, probably how many people you've killed via headshot, everything like that. So it's pretty helpful to see what you need to improve on, essentially. I think it even tells you what weapons you got the kills with, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah. They also improved a lot of the NPCs, the open world, talents, weapons, conflict, PvP, the dark zone, skills, UIs, some bugs they fixed, some settings, some stuff on PC specifically, and several general things. So I'm not going to go through all of them because obviously this is a huge list of stuff that I'm just labeling the name of the categories that each have their own long list of stuff. So yeah, I do highly recommend that you check out the new patch notes because they did fix a bunch of the NPC stuff, and the bugs and the skills were all pretty helpful for what they fixed mostly. And then the other stuff is also helpful, just not as helpful as those few things. But overall, in summary, it has an 8-man raid that is very fun and it's very challenging. So if you're not up for being super serious and communicating with people and like seriously, I do highly recommend that you play with friends because I didn't really play with anybody that I really knew, and it was kind of boring, especially since there was one person that like was kind of being iffy throughout it. Actually, there was a few people that are kind of being iffy throughout it, and it was pretty annoying. So I would recommend that you get a group of friends that know what they're doing, everything like that. Obviously, a lot of groups don't have 8 people that have the same game, so I know that's hard. That's one thing that's annoying me about the 8-man raids that have been coming out in a lot of games, mostly Ubisoft games. But yeah. So anyway, the new classified missions are interesting to the story as well because we actually know how the Black Tusk, or at least we're starting to know how the Black Tusk actually got into DC instead of just like a little cutscene of them actually coming in. And then they've also fixed and improved a lot of issues throughout the game, which is also very helpful. And they've added new features that help out the player more. And I've overall given this an 8 out of 10, mostly because the bug fixes were, like, all the fixes and improvements that they've added in the game are pretty cool, and they're very helpful. The 8-man raid is really cool, and the missions are really amazing. It's just the only thing is that one person, and this is kind of what happened to us, is that one person can screw it up for the entire group in the 8-man raid. But overall, the 8-man raid is great. It's just that the people can mess it up. So there's nothing really wrong with the game. It's just that it's hard for the game to manage how terrible people can be sometimes. So if you got a terrible person on your team, and I don't just mean in gameplay, this person was also pretty toxic, and was just kind of being mean and kind of thought that they were in charge of everything, when in reality, everyone should just be communicating with each other, instead of one guy just telling people what to do. But this person really ruined the experience for a lot of people. I try to stay positive about it, but this guy was really bringing it down. So if you have one person like that, it can suck. So, and it's really easy to do that because you obviously have 8 people, so you have a pretty good chance of that actually happening. So it kind of sucks, but otherwise, everything else is good. So besides all that, make sure you check out our websites. That has like YouTube channels, a Twitch stream, and obviously this podcast. All of that is about gaming. Make sure you also check out our Instagram and Twitter, which is AF Community. And then also make sure you check out DJ Augie, who made the music at the beginning and end of this podcast. And then I'll also have my email in the description if you guys want to ask me any questions or have suggestions for episodes or want me to review something. But besides all that, game on.